all the record. We want you to sound as beautiful as possible, and I can up the audio on some people, but I have to do it every 2 seconds. It'll sound like gibberish. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, I'm going to make sure your recording is perfect. It looks like you guys are set and ready to go. I'm going to hide myself now. Turning off my video. Boom. Okay, you guys ready to go? Okay, when I say 3, you start. 1, 2, 3.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and taking the time to listen to our presentations. We're Team House, and our research proposal concerns how looking at your own face in a group setting affects your divergent thinking performance. Now, as our world has had to transition to new online learning and collaborating environments due to COVID-19, new questions arise regarding what the effects of these online platforms have on our cognition, notably our creative cognition. Now, there have been studies that have been done that have involved someone looking at their own face on a screen and having to perform a specific task. But these tasks are usually simple, and it has shown that it's not actually technically related to your ability to perform well. So there have been no tasks, or there have been no studies, though, about whether looking at your own face might actually have an effect on how you think creatively. And there's also never been studies on what happens when you look at your own face while at the same time being aware that you're being watched, much like we are on this Zoom platform. Drawing off of Dr. Green's presentation on creativity, we were inspired and we thought, oh, this really relates to what we're doing right now with our research proposal. We have to create ideas from certain situations and present them in such a way on platforms such as Zoom. So how does this affect how we think creatively? So our main focus is on divergent thinking, which is the idea of brainstorming and thinking of new ideas from a given scenario. The opposite of this is convergent thinking, which is basically a non-creative way of thinking that is similar to a standardized test question and usually leads to a concrete answer. And we have found from studies that divergent thinking is manifested by high alpha synchronization in EEG scans. So we decided to propose a study that could potentially measure these levels while doing tasks on something like a Zoom platform.
So our research question is, how does looking at your own face in a group setting affect the focus of your attention on creative task performances that involve divergent thinking? We believe that the act of seeing one's face while having the feeling of being observed will result in decreased ability to perform well in divergent thinking tasks. For our experiment, we will have 40 17-year-old females who are in their senior year of high school perform 3 different tasks while connected to an EEG. The first task will be a divergent thinking task where participants will be given a hypothetical situation and must think of as many unique consequences of the situation as possible. An example question could be, if all schools were shut down, how would you educate yourself? An example of a non-creative answer would be that they will read books and also look online. A more creative answer would be that they will read books but will also look at nature. Then for the convergent thinking task, they will be asked to solve a question much like the ones in a standardized test. For example, Tina has as many sisters as brothers, but her brother Peter has twice as many sisters as brothers. How many sisters and brothers are there? And for the final task, the relaxation task, participants will be asked to imagine a peaceful scenario. An example could be, you are on a beautiful beach, the waves are rolling, and you have a delicious fruit smoothie in your hands. The divergent thinking task will be scored based on fluency, which is the number of relevant ideas, originality, which is the unusualness of those ideas, and flexibility, which is a variety of ideas. Convergent thinking will be scored on if the answer is right or wrong, and the relaxation task will not be scored.
Our participants will be going through 4 different trial types, A through D. Our first trial type is a person can't see their own face, they're individual. Our second trial type is a person can see their own face. Our third is a person can see their own face and others' faces. And our last trial type, a person can't see their own face, but others' faces. Like in the pictures to the left, we're showing a simulated Zoom call. So our first one is they can't see anyone's faces or their own, and it's just a screen. Our second one is they can just see their own face. The third is everyone's faces and their own. And our last is trial type D, which is they can't see their own, but everyone else's. And to test these conditions, we're going to be using EEGs, which we were able to learn a lot about from Dr. Van Meer this week. And an EEG is a machine that uses electrodes to record synchronized neural activity from neurons, which can be examined or wavelength patterns and frequencies to ultimately draw inferences about brain stages and abnormalities.
For our experiment, all participants will go through all the 4 blocks of child types with 40 childs each. The order of child type block will be counterbalanced between subjects. For each child, subject will first look at a fixation cross at the resting state, while researchers record their baseline alpha synchrony level. And then after reading the question prompt, they will generate ideas creatively while we will record the activated EEG level. And then we will eliminate the periods while the subjects have significant ocular movement, and that confounds our data. And then we can calculate our task-related EEG alpha synchronization level by subtracting EEG data 1 from data 2. After that, subjects are to write down their answers, which will be then scored based on respective creative scoring criteria. And then we'll compare the alpha synchrony level and creativity score between group A and B and group C and D. Hopefully, if we observed similar level of creativity during the divergent thinking task between group A and B, then our study shows that seeing one's face on our own doesn't negatively impact the creativity-related task performance, which, besides attention, which recent studies have shown. But if we show that group D has significantly higher creativity than group C, then strikingly by contrast, seeing one's face in a group setting impedes divergent thinking and creativity. Then this discrepancy between the two calls for further research on the cognitive functions of socialization, like one's self-awareness in a group setting, and also the complicated interplay between self-referential network, for example, the default neural network and social brain areas, probably using fMRI.
So over the past 2 weeks, we've had many lectures discussing ethics, specifically from Dr. Giordano, and we've learned a lot, but unfortunately, or fortunately, there's not just ethics to consider here, there's also legal and social implications, otherwise known as ELSI. Ethically, we would have to worry about deception. In order to have as little variables as possible within the experiment, we would need to have a manipulated Zoom environment with pre-recorded calls, much like this one. However, the subject could not know that the call was pre-recorded in order to preserve the feeling of live observance by others. Legally, this shouldn't be all too hard. What we would need is parental and participant consent, which wouldn't be that much of a stretch, seeing as the experiment is both non-invasive and relatively simple. And socially, this could help all of us who are in fact students be able to focus more while doing these creative tasks while in this new online learning environment. We've never done this before, but if we just understood a little bit more about what was happening neurologically, it could help us better understand. Another thing this could help us figure out is how much of ourselves we change when in front of other people. How much of ourselves we change when we feel that we're being observed. This could carry very big implications as far as how much of ourselves are social and how much are not. These are all the wonderful papers we had the opportunity to read and cite from. And we would also like to give a very big thank you to Dr. Rachel Wertzman, Morgan Beal, Dr. James Giordano, and Sophia Ogot for their insight and review. Without them, this research proposal would never have gotten past the title slide. And then once again, we'd like to thank all of you for listening. Thank you so much.
Wonderful presentation, everybody. I'm going to bring on the judges to receive their insight.
Should I stop screen sharing, Marshall?
Yes, please do that.
Wonderful. I'm not going to say too much because I'm biased. I think you're all really wonderful. It was very, very good. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just hand it on over directly to our referees. And at this point, let's start with Professor Dr. Nico Kohls. Kohls.
Okay. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, students. It was a brilliant presentation. I was really, really baffled, I can tell you. I mean, it was a sophisticated design. Looking from the papers you cited, it seems you have done a very thorough literature review, and congratulations on that. I have only one question that came up to me, because we know that alpha synchronization, and particularly frontal alpha synchronization, is related to top-down processing, whereas alpha desynchronization is related to bottom-up processing. And I wonder if I missed the word top-down and bottom-up processing in your presentation, and I wonder whether you have discussed that as neurological processes are certainly involved.
Well, for that question, because in our researches, we found that there are several studies or controversies about the role of alpha synchrony in the neural process. So what we are referring to in this our study, our proposal, is only its role in creativity and divergent thinking, and we're not discussing the top-down inhibition and processing.
Okay, so and what is divergent thinking then, if I may ask? What does happen on a neurological level or on a psychophysiological level? What are the neurological hallmarks?
Well, we have seen a lot of neurocorrelates from papers. Yeah, and I believe that Ria, do you? Yeah.
So there are apparently they've found some specific networks that are involved in divergent thinking, but they haven't really specifically like proved it entirely that those networks are specifically involved. But what I've found is that the frontoparietal network as well as the default mode network are most involved in divergent tasks, such as the
Wow, very good. Here we go. That is what I wanted to hear. Congratulations.
Bravo. Very good. Okay, let's take it over to referee Faye Kayarian. You're on mute, dear.
Unmute.
There
Perfect.
you go.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for your presentation. Very, very well thought out. Clearly, there was a start, a middle, and an end. You presented your story very clearly. I was able to follow not only what you were presenting, but also why you were presenting it. And the fact that you cited certain talks throughout the past couple of weeks was very, very important in why you actually chose this project. You chose it to address this certain way. As a fellow student, I can say that this is on par with a lot of undergraduate presentations. And the study design was very, very well thought out. So I just want to say, fantastic job. When you guys, I think the only thing I'll say is when you guys introduce yourselves, when someone else passes off, just think about introducing yourself. Like say, hi, I'm Faye. I'll be bringing you through the study design and through our discussion points. But other than that, it was very well thought out, and I appreciated the logic and the reasoning behind each step along the way.
Very good. Thank you so very, very much, Faye. Professor Shook, over to you, sir.
I was enormously impressed. The visual, the layout, the organization, it was visually articulate as well as spoken. Each of you was very articulate, which made it very easy to follow what you were trying to say. Let me go back to the visual. Obviously, you're interested in real-world application. So the scenario would be some sort of video class in which when a student speaks, we would expect the opportunity for the screen then to show you looking back. That feature would have to be turned on, right? Because otherwise the student wouldn't be focusing, or even on their periphery, have their own face. But I know that some students toggle that off. They don't want, I don't know how common this feature is. I use 3 different platforms now. We're all adapting. But wouldn't the sort of null hypothesis, the simplest hypothesis, be that in fact, if the student is expected to focus on a large, like not a thumbnail at the top, but a large, you know, their face, so they can see their entire facial expression, wouldn't that actually slow down cognitive thinking? Wouldn't that be the null hypothesis, so that in fact you would get more conformity, you would get more recourse to sort of automatic, easy, habitual modes of answering and problem solving? So I'm wondering if you've sort of explored what might be called the null hypothesis, the simplest explanation, given just what we know about the psychology of people. I'm just wondering how much your team has explored the necessity of having one's face be, you know, this big on the screen in order to get the effects that you're looking for, because students may or may not turn that on, or sometimes professors just toggle off the video entirely, worried about these sorts of distraction problems. I'm sure there's something in your experimental design that takes this into account. But I'm interested in the transition to the real world student experience. Even if you're right, could it be wrong for the actual setting that professors are using these technologies for?
You bring up a good point, Dr. Shook. So we were actually discussing some of this previously. And I think what your question is would it actually translate in a real world situation? Would you actually become less like creative in a real world situation? Is that what you're asking specifically?
I'm just saying a lot is going on when you're looking at a 4:7 image of yourself. It's kind of distracting. It's almost like the auditory version of getting reverb back into your own ear. I don't know if you've ever tried this experiment, but if you've got even just a 1/5 of a second delay into your own ear, your speech suddenly slows down like this, and it's hard to focus, right? Maybe there's a visual version of this. You don't want to be having to pay attention to what's going on in your own face, precisely because whatever advantage there may be on the creative side via social cognition, you're just creating a weird feedback loop that we're not used to. It's really unnatural for the brain to try to process a mirror at the same time when we're speaking to others, because of course our social cognition is fixated on the gaze of the others. There's no natural, you know, we didn't evolve speaking into the glimmering reflections of ponds and so forth. So I have a feeling there's a lot more going on to social cognition here. And in fact, maybe we want to turn off the looking at one's own face.
Dr. Schwartz, you're absolutely right. One of the reasons we chose this experiment is because we noticed it with ourselves when trying to formulate a research proposal. I noticed my eyes would constantly drift back to my own screen. I was just so worried about how my appearance was being perceived by others. And when we started discussing this, we realized this was kind of a universal phenomena. And as we started messing with Zoom settings, we realized, yeah, there are some options. You can hide self-view, pin your own video. And when we did these things, we found them so disconcerting that we couldn't have them on for too long. We immediately switched them back to the normal settings because we just didn't enjoy the experience.
Okay, let's stop because we're drifting off point. Discuss the research only. Let me give you a tip. So if you're ever in a situation where you're at a conference and you're meeting and you're presenting your work, and one of your audience members or one of your referees begins to sort of drag you down what I call the proverbial rabbit hole of interesting conversation, keep it focused to your work, not necessarily the things that you're doing. Yeah, I use Zoom or I use this, but rather the work. My thought would be, Professor Shook made some wonderful points. And if in fact these things are what we call salient to you, in other words, meaningful to you, the way you handle that is, Professor Shook, that's an excellent, excellent question. You made some very, very good points, and we'd like to include that in our research. So what you've really done is you've given Professor Shook the nod of, yeah, wow, this is really interesting stuff. But in reality, it's not anything that you would hit upon or that you have hit upon in the proposal that you've made. So what you've done is this is what's called intentional drift, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you let your referees and your reviewers and your audience members who are perhaps subject matter experts recognize that you're taking their advice, okay? With that, why don't we go over to Ms. Lovelace? What'd you think about this, Sherry? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Not anymore. Right? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So fantastic presentation. I got distracted because I was looking at myself. So it was great. As Dr. Shook mentioned, it was perfectly organized. The slides were beautiful. Everybody presented themselves very well. It was nice turnout. You look appropriate. The one thing I will say, and it's something I need to work on when I'm using these different technologies now to communicate, is eye contact. So when I'm looking down at you, I need to be looking up at the actual light that shows my webcam so that your eyes are looking at, do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not explaining it very well, but it's something to concentrate on in the new environment, is trying to make sure that your eyes are actually looking at the other side and not just at your screen. Does that make sense? But that would be the only thing as far as presentation goes that I was interested in seeing a little bit more of eye contact. And it's something I need to work on too. But fantastic. Great job, guys.
Dr. Wertzman, over to you.
Really, guys, excellent. I'm so proud of you. Just really want to compliment your really, really lucid explanation of the tasks, the clarity of your delivery. It's, watching everyone's feedback, I know what you guys were considering as you went along, and you did just an excellent job. The flow, the organization, your background information, you did a great job with the illustrations. Really, it just came together extremely well. I really concur. This was really, truly a college level presentation. And I don't want to take too much more time than that because, a lot of the other judges complimented you in much the same way I would, but really excellent job. I'm really proud of you guys. This was a phenomenal project and you did an amazing job focusing it and pulling this into a good experiment, a really good experiment. Congratulations, guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Wertzman. So before we give you that rousing round of applause, which you so well deserve, I got to be the guy who spits in the Cheerios. So I have a question for you. 40 female participants. Might there be some distinctions with regard to the way males and females view themselves on a screen? The only reason I say that is that, perhaps some women spend a little bit of time in the morning putting their makeup on, and not all of us have the opportunity to spend some time every morning shaving our head. So there may be actually a differential self-referentiality that occurs with males and females that you might pull out on a subtle level. And you might want to just think about that. But that would be my only very subtle suggestion to you if I were going to actually review your research proposal, because I think by doing that, you'd actually get a deeper look into some nuances of what's going on in brains and be able to see, as Professor Cole says so often, our neuroanthropological similarities as well as our differences. So let's please give Team House a round of applause because I think they did an excellent, excellent job.
Amazing job, guys. And then to any admissions officers watching this video, information about each individual student and their individual student websites at the below in this video. And then if you have questions, you can call the number at the bottom of the video. It's Leadership Initiatives. And we'll happily answer any questions you may have about them. So with that said,